I'm here to share my very first monthly roundup for the month of May. So summer and freedom has started for me on the 10th. That was technically my graduation from college, but I did start reading earlier than that. This month has actually been really crazy for us. We've had baseball consuming most of our lives. About 5 days a week, we have to take both of my kids to different baseball events and games and practices. Then, of course, I had to do my spring cleaning because a lot of my house got neglected while I was in school. So it's been really nice to get on top of that. Plus, we've been remodeling our backyard, and that has been a huge project. We're almost done with it, and I'm super excited. And, of course, I still have to work. So I kept thinking that I didn't have enough time to read as much as I wanted to read. But when I look at what I've actually done through the month, I'm actually extremely pleased with how much I actually read this month. So I'm really excited to share this. The physical books that I have read are Daughters of the Moon by Lynn Ewing. This bind-up has 3 books, but I only read the first 2. I was hoping to finish the entire book, but I did need a break from witchy stuff, and this, I would say, is on the lower end of YA. So the first 2 that I read is Goddess of the Night and Into the Cold Fire. The first book follows Vanessa and Katie and starts developing their friendship to the reader, and it's really fun and sweet, and that's not usually an aspect that I look for in a book, is finding like a really great friendship, but this one really made me kind of see how much fun it is just to read about a couple of friends, because I generally go for sweet, sexy romances. While there's a little bit of that in this book, I think the main focus for characterization in here is the friendship between Vanessa and Katie. They both have special gifts that nobody knows about. They keep it secret. And as far as they know in this book, they are the only ones. The second book is a lot like the first book. There's some new events going on. I think it builds up a little bit more about getting you intrigued in what's going to happen next. Not super suspenseful where it's like a page turner and you have to find out what happens next, but at least it did keep me engaged enough to where I wanted to keep reading the series. This was just a really nice, quick, fluffy read that I began first thing after school to give my brain a break from such an intense reading schedule. I was originally recommended this book many years ago by my little sister, and then I found these bind-ups recently at my favorite bookstore, so I just had to grab them. This wasn't actually on a priority list, but for some reason when I was looking what I wanted to read, I thought that this would be a really good start. I'll definitely continue the series, and I think if I was to give it a star rating, it'd probably be about a 3.5 to 4 star, because I do really like the writing style, and the characters so far are pretty intriguing, and pretty much anything witchy automatically grabs my attention. The other book I read is Gone Girl. I actually did a review video on this book specifically. This was my first experience with psychological thrillers, and it's completely opened up my fascination and interest in this genre. So that was really exciting. But this book was absolutely amazing. I had such a great time reading this book. I couldn't stop talking about it. I couldn't put it down. I read absolutely every second I could, and sometimes when I probably shouldn't, like at my kids' baseball games. That's my dog barking. Aria Ludo, shh! I kept thinking the other moms at the baseball games would think that I was a bad mom because I wasn't paying attention, but I could hear if they hit the ball, and I would look up and root and cheer and watch whenever my kid was up to bat. But in the 6 to 7 year olds, they really don't get a lot of hits anyways. This book was really twisted, and it took me for an extreme roller coaster ride. After I read the book, I started watching more reviews on it, and pretty much everybody says the exact same thing. So like I said, I did a full review on another video, just a basic review in the beginning, and then it has a spoiler review towards the end, and that will be linked below, and also my Goodreads review is also linked below. This was my very first time ever doing a book review, so I was kind of nervous about it. I felt like it didn't go exactly how I wanted. I wish it had turned out differently. Where I left out stuff in one place, I discussed in another place, but I decided I'm not going to redo it. I'm just going to live and learn, right? I suggest checking that out, and I would love to hear all of your thoughts. The other physical book that I actually read is The Greatest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I'm almost finished with it. I will definitely be done with it tonight. I'm actually done with the actual story, and I'm in the exclusive Liam story that's at the end of the book. I wasn't actually going to read this to begin with this month, but I was kind of torn because there were so many good choices to choose from, and I picked 3 off the shelf and let my 7-year-old pick. And he liked the shiny gold letters, which I would have to agree. Anyway, I kind of wish I did not pick up the beginning of a series because I have to finish the entire series before I read anything else. Especially this series because it is so amazing. I am hooked. I love this book. It is like X-Men as other reviewers have described it, and I definitely have to agree wholeheartedly. The writing is absolutely wonderful, it's action-packed, or something interesting is always going on, whether it's some of the slower parts, I'd say, where they're just like riding in a car or something like that. You're always learning something really interesting about the character, although I have read a few negative reviews and they said that it was kind of boring, but I don't agree with that. I really liked it. I love the character development. The mystery is perfect and it leaves you craving to find out more without giving too many clues to lead you to think that you already know what is going to happen. And it's just the thing that I have been craving for so long. I had a huge hangover over the Divergent series and the Hunger Games series, although I really wasn't pleased with how Hunger Games had tied itself up, but Divergent, I absolutely love that. I've been dying for another really good dystopian. The romance is like any YA. It's predictable from the day they met, but it's really spaced out so much that it breaks the YA trope of insta-love. The relationship really slowly builds, and it's not so intense, which is nice that it doesn't distract from the main focus and purpose of the book. That was something I really admired about the Divergent series as well, that For and Tris has a really sweet, deep love that was very personal and hinted at that you craved more of. I know it's pretty off topic, but Divergent being such an old book, I have to take this opportunity to praise the way that they did that coupling because they just add this knowing, and their subtle actions really let the reader know how much they loved each other, not even as a convenience or a last resort that they just found something in each other. They didn't have to say anything or do anything extra to show the reader, or have really long drawn-out conversations about how much they loved each other. It was all in the way they acted with each other. To me, it was one of the most profound love stories that I've ever read. So, moving on. The rest of my reads are from audiobooks. This past month, I have been using Overdrive, and I listen to them when I am working and cleaning, and I just keep my headphones in when I can, while I help my husband with other stuff. The books I listened to on audiobook, I read The Bells by Danielle Clayton, I believe that's how you say it. I was taken by surprise with this book. It was so much fun, and I knew I was going to love it, but it was so much fun, and I was completely hooked. I was really disappointed that it didn't actually have a sequel yet, so I really hope there is a sequel to come out to it. I love this concept so much, and the twisted queen-to-be wreaking havoc on everyone's lives in a very Amy Elliott from Gone Girl kind of way. I love the fact that the Bells are sheltered and brought up to live with this fantasy of the way their lives will be. It's really romanticized and glamorous, and then they come to find out that it's not exactly what they thought after all. There are some political issues, and I think if I were to do a discussion on undertones, there are some parallels that we can draw in our own lives in the sense of expectations versus reality and the faces that we show people. One thing I also really loved about the romance is once the prince was introduced, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Another typical YA romance trope. And then when it flips, I was just like, that was great. I also listened to The Trials of Apollo, The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan. I really enjoyed this book. It was a really quick read and it was really funny. That being said, I must address that I have never read any of the Percy Jackson series. I'd seen the movie, but I can't really remember so much. And I also heard that it wasn't a great rendition of the book. Regardless, Apollo was really fun and I want to continue the series, but it's not on my high priority list. And I also want to read Percy Jackson. So I'm kind of thinking that I'll hold off on reading the next Apollo and I'll go back and read the Percy Jackson. And I also have the first book already anyways. I actually have 2 copies, so that works out. But again, it's still not on my high priority list. I have a lot of other reads that kind of take priority. I had resisted this whole Percy Jackson universe just because I thought that maybe I was a little too old for a middle grade book. But then again, I'm not too old for a YA, which I love, so why am I persistent in the way that I think about middle grade books? And I also see a lot of other people my age totally enjoying middle grade books, so I think I'm ready to get over it. And I also look forward to hopefully one day when my kids are more interested in reading that I can share this with them. Anyways, Apollo was really good. It was really funny as a 16-year-old kid with acne and no abs, adjusting to the human life with no extraordinary powers, and how it highlights his shortcomings. I feel like this is such a real and human thing that many people face from time to time, and it makes the characters really relatable, especially for middle grade audience. Next, I listened to Vampire Girl by Karpov Kinraid. Kinrad. I hope I'm saying that right. I have to give this book a 2-star. It was my least favorite this month. I most likely will not be continuing the series. Although I do kind of want to know what happens next. I did still complete it, which is good. So it served its purpose to entertain me, but there was more often than not something that I found flawed about it. It's about a modern, not extraordinary girl who runs into a sexy man who seems to appear wherever she is. Her mother becomes ill, and then she quickly finds herself thrust into this life in another world where vampires rule. She finds out her mother sold her soul to the devil and has cursed the family, so she's having to take on this burden. The main character has to choose to submit to this new life and choose a vampire mate for the rest of her life to spare her mother's life. I guess the premise is really not a bad idea. It's mostly with the execution. The main character just kind of accepts it. I also had the feeling that she already knew about vampires, but I wasn't sure why or how, if it is common knowledge in this universe. I like that it's a really quick read, so I cannot decide to fully denote it because of how fast the events progressed, because you kind of have to make sacrifices somewhere. If you want a quick read, you're not going to get a whole lot of in-depth discussion on what exactly is going on. It's just kind of like, here's a cool idea, and they're just throwing it at you. That's kind of the best way I can explain it. I also began the Sweep series by Kate Tyrnem. Another really quick read. I completed 2 in 1 partial day, like a half a day. I was in the middle of working, I'd finished Apollo, and I needed something else to go ahead and put on in the background while I was working. Sweep has been on my TBR for a really long time because it's about witches, of course. So I went ahead and put it on, and I was actually really surprised about how fast they were, so I was able to complete 2 in the rest of that day. I've read the first 3 books, Book of Shadows, The Coven, and The Blood Witch. It's rather simple but very entertaining. I think the suspense builds really nicely as far as I have read so far, with each book revealing some new big issue, and it all kind of builds on itself. I kind of have to put it in the same realm as Daughters of the Moon. The only thing that kind of made it awkward for me personally was that it really was great about it is that it really followed true to Wicca, the way they do circles and ritual, and I thought that that was really cool and interesting. And it also hits on another note about how people think that witchcraft is bad and evil and Satan worshippers, and the main character has to explain to her mom or her sister that it's not bad, it's worshiping nature and just living in nature. And so I really like that aspect. I've studied Wicca for many years, on and off since I was 15. I really like it. So I really enjoyed the way they played out witchcraft in this book. I've also left full reviews on Goodreads, which are listed below. Another book I would say it follows closely to in relation to 2 other comparisons or witchy reads that it follows closely to, I would say, are Crystal Magic, Secret Circle. So it's not really a great literary piece, but more like a sitcom, and it's entertaining. I also have a couple books that I started, but I did not finish. The first one is Coevolution by Arthur Wiseman. He is an indie author, and I was really excited that he reached out to me to give his book a try. His book is a sci-fi about these reptile species that have inhabited the earth long before humans did, and even before dinosaurs did. I thought this was a really fun and interesting idea. Humans have to share the earth with them, even though they eat humans. They have created a truce where the humans submit sacrifices to them so that they will leave the human population alone. But will this truce last? I think this is a really great idea, and it's getting great reviews on Goodreads. There were just a few things that kept me from continuing to read it. I also am new to sci-fi genre. Overall, I don't think that this was really the book for me, but I wanted to do a shout out to Arthur. I would suggest this book to anyone who loves sci-fi to check it out and give an indie author a chance. I also attempted Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. I know this is supposed to be a satire, but I just could not get into this book at all. This was compared to A Lord of the Flies, which I never read either, but with Beauty Queens, which the premise sounds really funny, and I feel like this is getting a lot of mixed reviews, and some people in the end loved it, but they either have this overall feeling of I loved it or it was really weird but I loved it. I really wanted to get into this book. I can appreciate dry humor. My experience with this book is that these beauty queens are slapstick stupid, which I don't really find funny. I also think it's an old stereotype that I think is outdated, really just isn't funny. While I kept trying to push through, there was absolutely nothing happening but just walking across the beach, and there was so much dialogue and irritating small talk of these beauty queens just saying the most stupid things ever. It seems like they haven't really fully realized that they're stranded either, and they're just kind of waiting around for someone to rescue them. I might have tuned out here and there, so I might be missing something, but in the end, this is a book that I sadly could not get on board with, and I don't think that I'll pick it up again. The next audiobooks that I have checked out on my device are The Diviner's Book 2, Layer of Dreams by Libba Bray, The Siren by Kiera Clapp. Every time I say her name, I screw it up. The Siren by Kiera Cass, This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. And I just got an email that another book I put on hold called The Coldest Girl in Cold Town is ready to be checked out too. So I'm really hoping that in 14 days I can listen to those 4 books. We'll see how it goes. Now today I took my son to the Butterfly Pavilion and we have been busy and had fun all day today. So my main purpose for going out today was to get the next 3 books in The Darkest Minds. Yay! I was excited. I got all 3 books. Even more surprisingly, they were having a buy one get one sale, so I got one of them for free. I got all 3 of these for like $22. I was super excited. I kind of thought that if I should go back and pick up another book, but we were already checking out and my son was getting really irritated. He didn't want to be there. So anyways, that's not bad though. I'm super excited with the purchase. So later on our way home from the Butterfly Pavilion, we stopped at the thrift store and I had to drop off some bags I needed to get rid of old sheets and stuff like that. And then we went to my favorite bookstore where they have the best book selection ever. Here is my haul. Gravesite by Charlaine Harris. It's the first book in the Harper Connolly series. And Ice Cold Grave by Charlaine Harris. It's the 3rd book in the Harper Connolly series. They didn't have the second one, sadly, but that's okay. The Last Sacrifice, a Vampire Academy novel by Rochelle Mead. Tonight the Streets Are Alive by Leela Sales. Emma Books has raved about her other book, This Song Will Save Your Life. When I saw this book, I was really excited and I was hoping that they would have This Song Will Save Your Life, but they didn't. But I'm still excited to read this book. The Isle of the Lost, a Descendants novel by Melissa De La Cruz. Aragon by Christopher Paolini. Pandora by Anne Rice. The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. Grimoires, A History of Magic Books by Owen Davies. This is kind of more of a reference item, and I was really surprised to find this. I really debated over getting this at all. Since I really like witches and all that fun stuff, I was like, you know what? I need to read this. I just need to. It's like a homework project. I already have an edition of Pride and Prejudice, but when I saw the Twilight version that matches the Twilight books, I just had to get it. So, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This one I didn't get at the thrift store, I got at my grocery store. I've been looking at this book over and over and over. Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. And of course I paid full price for that book, and then today I found the hardback edition at the thrift store for like $2. So that was irritating. I may actually see if I can take it back, and if not, I guess that's okay. Oh well. So that wraps up my May reading wrap-up and my end of May pre-June book haul. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night and bye!